In 1954, a janitor named Henry Washington gave his lunch to a broke 4-year-old actor named Clint Eastwood every day for 3 months. He never asked for anything in return. What happened in a Universal Studios hallway over those 3 months, and what Clint did 50 years later when he found Henry's grandson, became one of those stories about kindness across generations and debts that take half a century to repay. Henry Washington was 52 years old in 1954, working the night janitorial shift at Universal Studios. He'd been cleaning the studio's soundstages, offices, and hallways since 1947. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and Henry took pride in doing it well. Henry was black, which in 1954 Hollywood meant his career options were severely limited. Janitor, porter, kitchen staff. Those were the jobs available to him, regardless of his intelligence or capabilities. He'd tried for better positions over the years, but the doors were closed. So he cleaned. He mopped floors and emptied trash bins and polished the brass fixtures in the executive offices. And he did it with dignity because his mama had taught him that how you do anything is how you do everything. Clint Eastwood had just signed a contract player deal with Universal in early 1954, $40 a week. He was part of the studio's talent development program. Young actors they'd train, give small parts to, see if anything clicked. Most would be gone within 6 months. $40 a week wasn't much, even in 1954. After paying for his cheap apartment, gas for his beat-up car, and acting classes the studio required, Clint was living on maybe $2 a day for food. He'd skip breakfast, sometimes lunch, eat one cheap meal at night, usually a burger or some eggs at a diner. Lose weight he couldn't afford to lose. Show up to acting classes and rehearsals running on empty. The Universal lot was massive. Multiple sound stages, office buildings, back lots with standing sets. Clint spent his days moving between classes, auditions, and the occasional bit part. Sometimes he'd sit in the hallways between obligations, reading scripts or just trying to conserve energy. That's where Henry first noticed him. A young white actor, there were dozens of them on the lot, sitting on the floor in a hallway near Soundstage 12, reading a script. Nothing unusual, except Henry noticed the kid was there a lot. Morning, afternoon, evening, just sitting, reading, waiting. And Henry noticed the kid was getting thinner. One evening in late March 1954, Henry was mopping the hallway and saw Clint sitting with his back against the wall, script in hand, looking exhausted. "You okay, son?" Henry asked. Clint looked up. "Yeah, just resting between classes." Henry nodded, kept mopping, but he noticed Clint's hands had a slight tremor, the kind you get when you haven't eaten in a while. The next evening, same hallway. Clint was there again, sitting in almost the same spot. Henry was carrying his lunch pail. His wife, Martha, packed it every day. Sandwich, apple, thermos of coffee. Simple but good. He sat down on the floor next to Clint. "You mind company?" Clint looked surprised, but said, "No, go ahead." Henry opened his lunch pail and pulled out the sandwich. Ham and cheese, Martha's homemade bread. He broke it in half and offered one piece to Clint. "I'm not that hungry today. You want half?" Clint hesitated, pride warring with hunger. Hunger won. "If you're sure you don't want it." "I'm sure." They sat there, eating in silence. Henry drank his coffee. Clint ate the sandwich half slowly, trying not to look too desperate. When they finished, Henry said, "I'm here most evenings around this time, cleaning this hallway. If you're around, we can split my sandwich again." Clint understood what was being offered. Not charity, just a man sharing his lunch. I appreciate that. For the next 3 months, almost every weekday evening, Henry and Clint had the same ritual. Henry would show up to clean the Soundstage 12 hallway around 6 p.m. Clint would be there between classes or auditions. They'd sit on the floor. Henry would open his lunch pail and they'd split whatever Martha had packed that day. Sometimes they'd talk. Henry told stories about growing up in Louisiana, about coming to California for work, about his wife and 3 kids. Clint talked about trying to make it as an actor, about his doubts, about whether he was wasting his time. You any good? Henry asked one evening. I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to find out. Then you keep trying until you know. Ain't no shame in finding out. Sometimes they didn't talk much, just ate in comfortable silence. But that daily sandwich half kept Clint going. It was often the only real food he ate all day. Henry never made it feel like charity. He'd always frame it as, I'm not that hungry, or Martha packed too much, or help me out so this doesn't go to waste, preserving Clint's dignity while making sure the kid ate. In June 1954, Universal decided not to renew Clint's contract. 6 months was up. He hadn't gotten any significant parts. They were bringing in a new batch of contract players to try out. The last evening before Clint's contract ended, he sat in the hallway one more time. Henry came by with his mop and bucket. They split the sandwich as usual. Then Clint said, I got dropped. Contract's done tomorrow. Henry nodded. What you gonna do? Keep trying. Find work where I can. Keep auditioning. I'm not ready to quit yet. Good. Don't quit before you find out if you're any good. Clint pulled out a $5 bill, about an eighth of his final week's pay. I want to give you something for all the lunches. Henry refused. I shared food I was going to eat anyway. You don't owe me anything. I owe you more than you know. Those sandwiches kept me going. Then pay me back by making something of yourself. That's all the payment I need. They shook hands. Clint left Universal the next day. Henry kept mopping floors. They never saw each other again. Clint's career took the path everyone knows. Struggle, television, spaghetti westerns, stardom, directing. By the 2000s, he was a living legend. Henry Washington kept working at Universal until 1972, when he retired at 70. He and Martha moved to a small house in Compton. They raised their 3 kids, saw them graduate, watched them start families of their own. Henry died in 1989 at age 87. Martha followed in 1993. Their kids scattered, one to Oakland, one to Atlanta, one stayed in Los Angeles. In 2004, 50 years after those hallway lunches, Clint was at an event at Universal Studios celebrating the studio's anniversary. Walking through the lot brought back memories. He mentioned to a studio executive, is there any way to find out what happened to someone who worked here in the 1950s? A janitor named Henry Washington. The executive was surprised, but said they could check. It took a few weeks. They found Henry's employment records. Worked at Universal from 1947 to 1972. Deceased 1,989. But the records had an emergency contact from his retirement paperwork. A daughter, Dorothy Washington, with a Los Angeles phone number from 1972. Clint's assistant tracked the lead. Dorothy had moved to Atlanta, but she had a son still in Los Angeles. Marcus Washington, Henry's grandson. Marcus Washington was 28 years old in 2004, working 2 jobs, day shift as a medical supply delivery driver, night shift at a shipping warehouse, trying to save money to go back to school. He dropped out of community college after 2 years when his grandmother died and the family finances fell apart. He lived in a small apartment in Carson, barely making rent, stuck in the same cycle of working to survive that his grandfather had broken out of by getting that Universal job decades ago. In August 2004, Marcus got a phone call from someone claiming to work for Clint Eastwood. He assumed it was a scam. Mr. Eastwood would like to meet with you. He knew your grandfather. My grandfather died in 1989. He knows. He'd still like to meet you. Marcus hung up, called his mother in Atlanta. Someone's running a weird scam using Clint Eastwood's name. His mother was quiet for a moment. What did they say? Marcus explained. His mother said, your grandfather worked at Universal Studios. He used to come home with stories about the actors he'd see. One time he mentioned helping a young actor who was going hungry. I don't remember the name, but maybe call them back. A week later, Marcus sat in a restaurant in Burbank across from Clint Eastwood. He still wasn't entirely convinced this was real. Clint was 74 years old, white-haired, but still commanding presence. He shook Marcus's hand and said, thank you for coming. You look like your grandfather. You knew my grandfather. In 1954, I was a broke contract player at Universal. Your grandfather was a janitor. Every evening for 3 months, he shared his lunch with me, split his sandwich, gave me half, kept me from going hungry when I had nothing. Marcus listened as Clint told the story. The hallway near Soundstage 12, the lunch pail, Martha's sandwiches, the quiet dignity of a man helping someone without making it feel like charity. He never mentioned this, Marcus said. He wouldn't have. That wasn't the kind of man he was. He did it because it was right, not because he wanted credit. Why are you telling me now, 50 years later? Because I never got to thank him properly. I tried to give him $5. He refused. Told me to pay me back by making something of myself. Well, I did that, and now I want to finish paying him back. Clint slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $100,000. Marcus stared at it. I can't accept this. Your grandfather gave me food when I was starving, not once. Every day for 3 months. He kept me alive during the time I most needed help. This isn't charity. This is a debt. But you're working 2 jobs trying to save for school. Your grandfather would want you to have the chance to do more than survive. Take it. Finish your education. Make something of yourself. That's how you honor him. Marcus's hands were shaking as he held the check. I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it to build something better. That's what your grandfather wanted for his family. But Clint wasn't done. There's more. I've set up a scholarship fund in Henry Washington's name for employees and employees' families at Universal Studios who want to go back to school. Your grandfather spent 25 years cleaning that studio. This makes sure his name is remembered for something more. The Henry Washington Scholarship Fund started with a $500,000 endowment from Clint. It's given out scholarships every year since 2004 to Universal employees or their children pursuing education. Marcus used the $100,000 to finish his degree at Cal State, LA. He got a degree in business administration, then an MBA. He now works in hospital administration, managing supply chains for a major medical center. He got married in 2008. Clint sent a wedding gift, a framed photo of the Universal Studios lot in 1954 with a note, your grandfather worked here with dignity when dignity wasn't always granted. Honor his memory by living well. Marcus named his first son, born in 2010. Henry, at the baptism, Clint sent flowers and a college savings bond. In 2019, Marcus was invited to speak at Universal Studios for the 15th anniversary of the Henry Washington Scholarship Fund. He brought a photo of his grandfather in his janitorial uniform from the 1960s. My grandfather, Henry Washington, cleaned floors at this studio for 25 years. Marcus told the audience of scholarship recipients he didn't make much money, he didn't get famous, but he lived with principle. When he saw someone hungry, he shared his food. When he saw someone struggling, he offered dignity instead of pity. 50 years later, Clint Eastwood tracked down our family to repay a debt my grandfather never thought needed repaying. That's the power of kindness. It echoes across decades. It touches generations. Clint was in the audience. He stood when Marcus finished speaking. They embraced. Afterward, Clint told him, "Your grandfather's sandwiches might have saved my life." But more than that, the way he gave them with respect, with dignity, like he was doing me a favor by letting me help him finish his lunch that taught me how to treat people. That mattered more than the food. Here's what those 3 months in 1954 teach us. Henry Washington was earning maybe $50 a week as a janitor. Sharing half his lunch every day was a real sacrifice. But he did it because he saw someone in need and had the means to help. He didn't do it for credit, didn't tell people, didn't expect anything in return, just quietly made sure a hungry kid ate something decent each day. Clint could have forgotten. 50 years is a long time. Henry was a janitor who shared some sandwiches. Most people wouldn't remember. But Clint did remember. And when he had the resources to do something meaningful, he didn't just write a check. He found Henry's family. He created something permanent in Henry's name. He made sure Henry Washington's grandchildren and great-grandchildren would know their grandfather mattered. That's the lesson. The small kindnesses we offer cost us little but can change trajectories. And the gratitude we carry for those kindnesses can ripple forward across generations, turning a shared sandwich into a scholarship fund that helps hundreds of people. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that no act of kindness is ever wasted, even when it's as simple as sharing your lunch.